Hello students, today we are going to start your fourth unit and there is a book, My Experiment with Truth, written by Mahatma Gandhi. This is an autobiography of Mr. Gandhi. The complete name of Mahatma Gandhi is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And this book contains the life history of Mahatma Gandhi till 1921, from birth to 1921. As we know, in 9 January 1915, Mahatma Gandhi returned to India from Africa and from the European countries in India. And when he was sent to jail and or a prison, he composed his autobiography when the acquaintance forced him. And this book contains 135, at least 130, 120, 135 lessons, and these lessons are divided into 5 parts. There are 5 parts in this book. First part contains the childhood and the school days, and last part contains the political life. But second, third, and fourth part are included in your syllabus, so we have to know about that. First of all, we will know about Gandhiji, and then the book review and summary, and at last we will know about the subject of these 3 parts. So look at that. First of all, the introduction of Mahatma Gandhi. The story of my experiment with truth, it is written by Mahatma Gandhi. Popularly, it is known as an autobiography. Cover page of 1913 reprint by Bacon Press. This is the latest version. And author Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. This is the complete name of Mr. Gandhi. Mr. Gandhi, in these days, popularly known as the father of the nation, or Bapu, Rashtrapita, etc. Original title of this book is Satyana Prayogo Yathva Atmakatha. This name is in Gujarati language, and later he translated it into English. Translator Mahadev Desai. Mahadev Desai translated this Gujarati version into English. Country, India, and language, Gujarati. There is no series of this book because this is the only autobiography which we have about Mr. Gandhi. Introduction. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born in Porbandar, India on October 2, 1869. He was the youngest of 3 sons, and books were his only companions because he was very shy in his school days. So there are books only his companions. His father and grandfather were great men of principle, while his mother was very religious. They influenced his life immensely and they raised him to put virtue before wealth. All the tender age of 13, he had an arranged marriage. In 1887, Gandhi left India to go to England to study law. His mother made him promise that he practices abstinence to wine, women, and meat before she gave her blessing for him to leave. These are the 3 things his mother want he do not practice in the foreign country. First is wine, second is women, and third is meat. And he fulfilled all these oaths. In England, he joined a vegetarian society and was introduced to the Bible there. The Sermon on the Mountain was his favorite reading, and he expended himself to study the principle of world religion. He wanted to know about the word and the law of the word, so he take the subject, the law, as his studies in the foreign countries and completed his LLB there. He traveled to South Africa as a barrister after completing his LLB in 1893. This is the same year when Swami Vivekananda went to Chicago on the religious committee, or can be said religious campaign, and there he gave the historical speech. In 1893, Mahatma Gandhi goes to South Africa and signed a 1-year contract. However, he remained there over 20 years. During his time there, he fought for the racial unity and the end of race prejudice because he also faced the race prejudice in England and in South Africa. in the train or in the rickshaws, in the tongas, etc. Gandhi lived by his convictions and persuaded others to follow simplicity, harmony, non-violence, and humanitarian efforts. These are the mantra given by Gandhiji in his earlier days in South Africa. He works for there the racial prejudice and fought for the freedom of the blackest personalities, the blackest persons, the blackest people of South Africa and related to India. In 1903, he set up office to be an attorney in Johannesburg and wrote his own newspaper for the Indian people called the Indian Opinion. Because of his belief in non-violent civil disobedience to react to an injustice of prejudice, he was sent to prison in 1908. Gandhi expressed he much rather be a political prisoner to stop the anti-Asiatic declaration than to allow it to happen, so he used passive resistance as his weapon. He don't want to use the active weapons because he think that the active weapons are the cause of destruction, so he used the non-violence, the non-cooperation, etc. as the weapons for the further uses, for the freedom, for the social reformation, etc. Gandhiji, who was a well-established personality in Indian freedom struggle, as we know that he is the greatest or he is the most important freedom fighter in Indian national movement, and as we know that he works for society, he works for the nation without any selfishness, and he used as his weapon to the non-violence and non-cooperation, because these are two weapons used by the Buddha than Mahatma Gandhi. These weapons are very strong weapons in these days also. Gandhiji was asked to write an autobiography midway through his career when he was in the Narvada jail, and there his companion said that why don't you write an autobiography? From this autobiography, many of the person know about your personality, your struggle and your career, and then take some they take some education from your they learn something from your autobiography and became the patriotic person and will fight for the freedom of India. In his farewell speech at the end of book, he stressed the spirit of truth will bring happiness and peace. He ends it with so long as a man does not of his own free will put himself last among his fellow creatures and there is no salvation for him. These words are taken from his speech. And Gandhiji works for the common man in South Africa and then in India after the 9 January 1915. For 4 years he traveled all around the India and then in 1919 he actively, actively took a participation in Indian freedom struggle. Introduction of the book. The introduction is written by Gandhiji himself, mentioning how he was resumed writing his autobiography at the instance of Satyajit Jairam Das, a fellow prisoner in Yarwada Central Jail with him. He mulls over the question a friend asked him about writing an autobiography itself, deeming it as an Western practice, something nobody does in the East. This is the real autobiography which is all over are appreciated. This is the one of all the autobiographies which are appreciated all over the world. Because this is truly the real autobiography. In this autobiography, Mahatma Gandhi only told the truth and nothing else. As we know that autobiography should be the truthful with the truthful events, but most of people use the wrong ideas, the falsehood and other ideas without any truth. But Mr. Gandhi used the truest idea in his book and we can say this is the real autobiography. There are two biographies very popular in these days. First is biography and then second is autobiography. Biography is written by the another person. Biography is a story of a person which is written by another person, and Autobiography is a story of a person which is written by himself. So we can say that it is an autobiography. Book review. The story of my experiment with truth. In this story, Mr. Gandhi made some experiments with truth. He want to know why a person should talk the truth because it is very safe in safe mood or it is good for the human society or human personalities. So he makes many experiments with the truth. Gandhiji, the respectful way to refer to him is a very strange figure in Indian history. Strange figure because he is not too strong, not too wealthy personality. He was a very weak personality and belonged to a can be said, middle class family. He is both more Indian and less Indian than anyone you will ever meet or read about. He is both more Indian and less Indian because he belonged to South Africa and England. Most of his studies was in England and then his most of his work are taken in the South Africa. Then we can say he is both more Indian and less Indian than anyone you will ever meet or read about. Indians love to celebrate him and love to distance themselves from him. His name lives on a legacy of political leaders that he would likely not endorse. People loved him but don't want to know about Gandhi because they only respect to him and don't want to learn about him. This is a very pathetic condition of the follower of Gandhi. Gandhiji's influence on India is a topic for another post. This book is his autobiography and his views of what was going on around him during the beginning of the movement for a free and independent India. It is a classical, however, don't expect it is prepared you for Indian culture like other books might because when Gandhiji returned in 1915, he didn't know much about India. So he decided to travel all around the India for 4 years and then traveled all around India and then learn about India and then at last he decided to jump into the freedom movement of India. So we can say that Gandhiji has a great influence of the villages, of the towns and of the cities of India on his character after 1919. And in 1919 he took the active participation, he started the active participation in Indian politics. He talks in detail about his family in the first chapter, can be said the part first. And he obsesses over food and vegetarianism. He is consumed both with very noble thoughts and very common, ordinary thoughts. After reading this, Gandhiji comes across as the true common man to emulate because Gandhiji in really is a common man and he works for the common man, he fights for the common man and for the freedom of India. So we can say first of all, he himself practiced the commonness and then teaches all the persons. This is the mantra of Gandhi and Gandhiji gave a mantra of non-violence. Non-violence is the greatest weapon in this world which was used ever because if you use a weapon, the weapon is the answer. But if you use no weapon, what could be the answer? This is the question and Gandhiji got a great success against the foreign rulers in India. As we know, Gandhiji was very much dedicated to the freedom movement of India and he works for the freedom of India for the 30 years in his career of 30 years and at last he died to survive the India in 1948. On 30 January 1948, person Nathuram Godse killed him with a shoot of a pistol and then he was over and the news of he was passed away or can be said he became a patriotic person of India. He became a martyr. So we celebrate 30 January the martyr day in India. In first and second chapter of this book, he talk about his marriage at age of 13 and then he talk about the education of his wife and there is the lust or the sex which took place between them. For that cause, he couldn't teach his wife earlier the reading and the writing. But later, he taught his wife about all these things, and his wife can easily read a letter, easily can read a newspaper. So he became successful at last. When he was in South Africa, he uses the weapon non-violence on his wife firstly, and then when he got the success, he uses this weapon on the country also. That we can say that he makes many experiences in his life. So this book is called My Experiment with Truth, and the title is very suggestive. The book covers has life up until 1921, about the time his international fame was started to spread, and despite not covering the later part of his life, you get a great perspective into his character, values, and travels which stay consistent throughout his life. He traveled Africa, he traveled the Europe, he traveled all around the India and many other countries to know about the world about India. And when he returned India in 9 January 1915, he decided to travel India because he didn't know much about India. So he decided to travel, and then he explored the reality of Indian villages, Indian people, and the thinking way of India. All these things are learned by him. And at last, in 1919, he became the active participant of Indian movement, Indian freedom movement in India, and become a compulsory part of Congress till his death. He is the most important part of Congress from 1990 to 1948. And as we know that Mahatma Gandhi, who is known as the father of India in these days, is worshipped in India after the independence. About the book. An immortal book. This is an immortal book because a book is always immortal if it is good, and this book is the best book and in autobiographical series. This book is an autobiography of Gandhi, and the complete name of Gandhi is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and titled as Mahatma. It is detailed account of Gandhi's consisting of Gandhi's self-penned essays. There are 105 essays in all, and all on his experiments and cover all aspects of the Mahatma's spiritual life. So we can say that this is the real story of a Mahatma, and Rabindranath Tagore gave him the title of Mahatma when he saw that the person is dedicated to the freedom movement. So Rabindranath Tagore, who was inspired, who became very charmed by the personality of this person and gave him the title of Mahatma. Mahatma Gandhi, who was born in 2 October 1869, fought for India from 1915 to 1948, and he got the success in 1947 when India got freedom. And as we know that the nation today, the India dedicated him the title the father of the nation, which is a very big reward for his life. So we can say he got a great success. This autobiography is divided in 5 parts. As I have told you, there are 5 parts in it. Starting from his childhood days, his experience in South Africa, where his experiment with the powerful weapon of Satyagraha and his transformation from Mohan to Mahatma, and his various experiments on fundamental principle of truth and God, till the year 1921, after which his life was so public that he felt there was hardly anything to write about, because in 1921 he was an unknown personality. Till 1921 he was an unknown personality, and then after 1921 he became the huge part of Congress, and we know about every minute, every second of his life as the history of Indian national movement. So there is no need to write any autobiography. Before 1921, he was an unknown personality because till 1915 he lived in South Africa for 20 years, and then he returned to India. And after returning, he traveled India for 4 years, and then he became the compulsory part or the huge part of Congress. And till 1921, he composed this autobiography in the Yarwada jail. Gandhiji's non-violent struggle in South Africa and India had already brought him to such a level of notoriety, audition, and controversy that when asked to write an autobiography midway through his career, he took it as an opportunity to explain himself. This is a great opportunity for Mahatma Gandhi to tell about himself to all the world and to teach what is the nation, what is the freedom, why we do need freedom. All these questions are explained in this book, and he used the truth. He completely used the truth in his autobiography, which is the essential part of an autobiography. As we know, my experiment with truth, which is written in 1921 at Yerwada jail in the Gujarati language, then his secretary Manmohan Desai translated it into English. And the English version is uh, edited by Mahatma Gandhi later, and then he said that the Manmohan Desai is the greatest translator in the world because he made the ideas as it is in this book. Accepting his status as a great innovator in the struggle against racism, violence, and colonialism, and Gandhi felt that his ideas needed deeper understanding. Gandhi explained that he was after truth rooted in devotion to God and attributed the turning point, success, and challenges in his life to the will of God. All these are accepted by him as an optimistic style. He thought that God is taking his exam and he will took the non-violence as a weapon and then decided to fight for the Indian freedom movement. And he got the great success in his life. Gandhi says that his attempt to get closer to the divine power led him seek purity through simple living, dietary practices. He called himself a fruitarian, celibacy, and ahimsa, a life without violence. It is in this sense that he called his book The Story of My Experiments with Truth, offering it also as a reference for those who would follow his footsteps, and always told him that about ahimsa is the greatest weapon to fight for any rights. And ahimsa means a life without violence. Gandhiji's autobiography is one of the best sellers and is translated in nearly all languages of the world. Perhaps never before on so ground scale, and has many men succeeded in shaping the course of history while using the weapon of peace, ahimsa. It is called non-violence in English. Too many, it will have the value of a new Bible or a new Gita. This is a very fine book, and many persons take it as a very holy book. For here are words that have come out from the depth of truth. Here is a tireless starving that stretches its arm toward perfection. Autobiography, in a way, is a confession of Gandhi's faith and a very basic document for the study of his thoughts. As we know, autobiography is a description of a person's life composed by himself or written by himself. And the other version of biography is biography, and biography is composed about a person's life and his events by another person. First part of this book is related to his childhood and about his early ages in his school days. And then part second, from arrival in South Africa to return to India. In 1893, he went to South Africa for 1 year, but he stayed there for 20 years at least, and returned in 9 January 1915, India. When he came to in India, the Congress was going to die, because there is no further political leader, there are no great leaders in Congress at that time, and all the leaders which are great became very old at that time. So he became the Supreme of Congress in 1919, and in 1924, in Belgaum, he became the President of Congress for one time. So this is the second part, from arrival in South Africa to return to India. Then the third part of this book is in South Africa with the family, and the Boer War, and Bombay and South Africa again. All these are found in the second part of this book. In South Africa, he took the family with himself, and the Boer War, for this war, he was titled as the Boer War gold medalist. And the Bombay and South Africa again, and these are the traveling of his life during this period. And all this are contained in this third part. The fourth part of this book is Mahatma in the midst of world turmoil. When he started his political career, and all these things are explained in this part. And one and the greatest message of his life is, my life is my message, because he wrote all the truth of his life in this book, and he said that the autobiography is my message because it is written by the pure heart. What first strikes us about Gandhi's autobiography is the strange wording of the title, My Experiment with Truth. If it had been a mere political life story, the title would have read something like An Autobiography, How I Liberate India from British Rule. But right from the beginning of the book, Gandhi is at pain of point out that it is not simple and description of events, although it does not provide this, but the recording of his effort to isolate truth amid and chaos of the normal existence. What makes the book doubly interesting is that it was written before he became the famous word figure. He did not, after all, return to live in India until 1915, and when he is in his mid-40s, and he was not then the white-robed figure we think that today, but a lawyer in a suit with a family. The solitary term Mahatma, great soul, had yet to stick, and he was still able to travel around India without getting mobbed. Whereas biographical dictionaries devote most of their entries to Gandhi's political work in India. Three-quarters of the autobiography is devoted to his youth and the 21 years of his adult life that he spent working for the rights of Indians in South Africa. Wherever he was, though the contents in Gandhi's life were his various experiments, the main one being vegetarianism, celibacy, non-violence, and simple living. Each of these were experiences of longer philosophical, spiritual concept that he drew from Hinduism. Brahmacharya, ahimsa, and aparigraha. No understanding of Gandhi is possible without at least having some awareness of these terms and what they mean to him. So, we will read about it later. Written originally in his native Gujarati, the book did not appear in English until 1957. Though rather long, it is broken up into short, clearly titled chapter on the essential episode of his life, in his life, and is one of the more gripping life stories you are likely to read. So now I want to explain the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi one by one. First of all, the Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, control of the senses in thought, word and deed, particularly sexual, self-purifying conduct that leads a person to God. Second is ahimsa and satyagraha. The other concept of guide Gandhi's life was ahimsa. In Hindi, ahimsa means the perpetual destruction and pain of normal existence and the way of the world. We can, however, adopt an outlook of compassion, ahimsa, which requires us to do all we can to avoid the recurrence of suffering and aggressions. Then the aparigraha. Gandhiji was passionate about the virtue of simple living, and despite being quite well off his barristeral days, made a point of cutting his own hair and doing his own laundry. He could never get his head around the idea of servants. And when his ashram was established near Ahmedabad, caused considerable controversy by getting everyone involved in the clearing of latrines, and there was a time when only untouchables did this work, and he do these works to show that all men are equal, so everyone do their work himself. Spiritual influences. Many of the early chapter in his book concerns Gandhiji's search for religious truth. And in London and South Africa, he flirted with Christianity, but could never bring himself to believe Jesus as the Son of God. He is, however, much inspired by the New Testament, not spiritually, uh, not surprisingly those parts which mention Jesus not fighting back, but preaching turning the other cheek. And then the final word. Gandhiji never liked the title Mahatma, as he did not think of himself as a great man. Far from being a trumpet blowing exercise, his autobiography was designed to objectively detail his discoveries and his failure in the relation to right principles and spiritual truth. And he never claims to have been perfect. So, these, this is the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, and these are the summary and the review of this book. So, best of luck. Have a good day.